Hello, viewer, and welcome to Spotlight here on Hope TV, where you look and live. And on Spotlight, we do our very best to bring to you persons who are changing, impacting our society in the direction of light. And we are so honored on this Spotlight edition to have with us Brother Reuben Kigame. Of course, he can see you all, right?
Yes, look and live. I'm looking at you.
Great. So we are very happy to have him. And we know him on many fronts. We know him as a musician, a gospel musician, and also as one who
That's
is
important,
very
yes.
vocal, about how the musicians are treated in terms of their income in this country. We also know him as a champion of mainstreaming the people who are living with different forms of disabilities. He's also a pastor, and he's also a media personality. He's many things, and also he's a political activist. I mean, he's a lot of things, and that's just what we can say.
That's the part they don't know and don't like.
Okay, the political activist
Yeah,
part.
especially Christians don't like me saying that. Yet I've been that since my college days at Kenyatta University.
Yeah.
I should tell you some of what was going on there. If you remember, the late 80s were very volatile in this country, and you had the Okulu's tradition up to the Muges and the Ndingimwana Nzekis and the Bidan Bugwas fighting for the liberation, which culminated in the repeal of Section 2A of the then Constitution. You know, Reverend Furi, I actually was at the Kamkunji grounds for the that liberation with Shikuku and the Orengos, the Matiba and Rubia. And I remember the speeches. I came all the way from Thika, where I was teaching, to attend that rally. It was phenomenal. We were on the streets demonstrating against the murder of the Robert Ouko. Of course, we were very disappointed with the death of Alexander Muge. So I come from that tradition. That's the part people don't know. They know the music, but they don't know the activism.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting when you bring us up to speed from a distance further out than where we know. And when you talk about that tradition of people who are in the Christian leaders, who got together, so to speak, or found a way of working with mainstream political leaders for one cause, right?
One cause.
And we have an outcome, with us today.
You cannot speak about the second liberation and leave out the church, because the church was extremely vocal. If you remember the magazine Beyond by Bidan Bugwa, that's Kanji's father. They know the music. So, that was my man. I mean, he drove a narrative that helped bring about that liberation. But he was not in isolation. You had the Hilary Nguenos and the Weekly Review movement and so on. But also escalate that to the IPPG 97 and all the way to the first constitutional discussions at Bomas. The church was there. The second draft, the Wako draft, the church was involved. So the church has always been involved in governance issues and so on. Even Bishop Emeritus Dr. David Oginde, he's been issuing statements, as a Christian leader. That combination that he brings to the table of the faith and leadership. So he has been vocal in giving direction.
And when you mention about that, I remember one of his recent imageries about the Jerusalem dance. And that was a very contemporary statement, but at the same time very powerful and insightful.
He was speaking truth to power, even as late as when he was leaving office. And everybody was saying the train has taken off, you can't stop BBI. He was still pleading for them to consider not just the voice of the church, but also the voice of many Kenyans whose thoughts and aspirations were not taken care of in that.
Brother Reuben, now that we are with the church, before we come to a very important matter about you vying for president in the coming year, the church seems to ride on already existing situations, right? And a question has been raised over the years of the possibility of the church having what you can call an ongoing political vehicle that perpetuates the ideals of that come from the biblical premise, and that would give the church a more permanent place, in the area of politics.
You know, Reverend, the truth of the matter is the church has always been involved, right from the mission of Jesus Christ. When you read Isaiah 61, it's all about liberation, justice and the shalom of God being experienced. And so when Jesus goes to the synagogue and they pull out the scroll for him to read in Luke 4, he pulls out that Isaiah passage, and it's saying the Spirit of the Lord is upon me. He's anointed me to bring good news, to the poor, to preach liberation of captives, and the day of visitation for those who are mourning, and so on. It's about justice. As Micah would say, God has shown us what is right to do. And what is that? But to love justice, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with God. So you cannot divorce the mission of the church from political activism, because the church speaks truth to power. That is something that the secular society cannot do. The secular society is full of compromises and a lot of humanistic ways of looking at justice and equity and so on. But the church comes busting through and saying there is a way to live, and this is the way. You can't go this other way. That's why, even for me as an advocate of justice, would be saying, instead of pushing for what they are calling the BBI, that's the Building Bridges Initiative, there is something at stake. It's not all that we're looking for. It's that we have thrown our values through the window. And so my take is we need a VBI, a value building initiative.
Now, Brother Reuben, value building initiative.
Character, chapter 6 of the Constitution.
You're already rising from your seat. I can see. I can tell that.
No, I'm very passionate about people. I mean, people. People.
All right, yes. And I know that is something we must talk about as we have this conversation. Let's take it from your inspiration and your decision to vie for president come 2022, right? And you're not new to politics, of course. You have attempted to be governor.
I didn't attempt. I actually I went and did full throttle.
Yeah, you did. And we know how that went.
Yes.
And now you have escalated this now.
There are people who don't know. There were 6 candidates in Vihiga County in the 2013 election. I came 4th out of 6, and I say I honorably lost.
And the good thing is that your spirit is still there, and now you're escalating this now to run for president. Now, what is your inspiration?
My inspiration is 2 things. One is God's call on the world to be a place of justice. That God demands justice for all. So that's my number 1 inspiration. Number 2 is I love people. I'm a people person. I live among people. I listen to people. I preach to people. I sing to people. I interact with people. And I know all is not well. And every time I see someone in distress, whether it's just a young person struggling with drugs, or I see somebody's daughter going into prostitution in order to make student tuition, or I see someone struggling as a single mother, with nobody to help, and then comes COVID, and so all these things, when I see people in distress, I feel uncomfortable. And it's not like I will solve everybody's problems, but I feel called to always do something about the suffering humanity. I believe it is a biblical mission. I believe that for us to even share the gospel, we have to go all the way to how somebody lives. It's not just come to Christ. It is, what happens to this young man? How are they going to live the rest of their lives? They could be my sons and daughters. So my inspiration is transformation, a better life. Now, so when you see people blatantly depriving people of life, basic fundamental things, like food and water and clothing or shelter. Someone in a Kibera house with his wife and 4 kids in a single room, it becomes inhuman to me. I begin to think, that's not what we fought for. That's not what our forefathers struggled and shed their blood for. And so we either have it or we'll fight for it.
All right, Reuben.
Yes.
Just like when we are at that and staying with, faith, because you mentioned about justice.
Justice,
and
yes.
you've talked about your love for the people.
Yes.
And going again a little biblical, when people were running to be, not running, but became kings, right? There were different ways in which people became kings. And taking the model of David, for instance, he was anointed, from God and by God, and it was very specific, right? And you can say that he was taken from, from the heart, from being a shepherd boy,
absolutely,
and coming to the throne.
Yes.
Now, the setup here is pretty different when you think about.
Not too different.
Let's because there's a calling, there's a dimension of a calling to this. But then you are getting into a very competitive fray, right? Where people are rising from different places and all that. So how do you locate yourself and your calling in this competitive fray?
Yes, so that's a very excellent question. I am sure if you read the life of David, you will realize that he was in a competitive space, competing with his brothers, that Jesse is looking at and thinking, this is the man. And God says, no, it's not them. Then you have David literally pursuing that call in the context of a Saul who wants to kill him. It is still competitive. In fact, all of Saul's encounters with David are about competition. And here is Saul competing with this small boy. So the component of locating myself within that kind of context is this. It's not every day that a Reuben Kigame will say, you know what, I'm going to vie for this office. And I said it on one of the shows. A friend of mine, Jeff Koinange, was interviewing me one time, and he asks me that same question. And I told him, I don't actually have to be president. And I actually don't have to. If people would do what is right, if the current leadership would do what is right, we would all be busy doing what we need to do. But it is within that context that God gives a passion. God gives a probing, some kind of push. For me, it was pretty much participating in the discourse through the Linda Katiba initiative, through the PACC, and all these constitutional discussions. I was quite happy there. But now, the last 3 years or so in this country have been momentous. And our leaders have taken off in a totally different direction. It's no longer the agenda 4. It's not, it's no longer the big 4. It is now about 2 people wanting the government and the people of Kenya to go a particular way. We like it, we don't like it. And what we thought was going to be a handshake that brings about peace has ended up, landing the country in a deplorable situation where the opposition is dead, and then all of the leaders that would be in that competitive space have gone on one side of the, so they've gone on to the right. So the left is left completely bare.
All right.
And that is where the people are. So it's people against, the One Kenya Alliance, and against, you have the deputy president who is somewhere in the middle. But there's nobody on the left.
All right. Now
with the people.
You mentioned the deputy president, and you mentioned, the two, Honorable Raila Odinga and also President Uhuru Kenyatta.
And the One Kenya Alliance on their side. On their side.
A whole, place there in terms of our politics. But I want you to give in a very short way, your assessment of the performance of the Jubilee government.
Oh my, are you sure you want it short?
It has to be short.
No, it's because the Jubilee government has been deplorable, completely wicked. And I mean, it's an illegitimate government, because right from day one, it is scandal after scandal after scandal. You're talking about the laptop promise that never was. You're talking about the SGR. You're talking about, let me just go to the latest one, the COVID billionaires, money meant for health. I counted like 15 major scandals in the last 9 years. And you're talking about lost money. And then the president comes and says, we're losing 2 billion shillings every day to corruption. And that's why I cannot take the deputy president seriously, because he is part of the government. And from day one, he should have been fighting graft. That is what I want to hear. The impunity where governors are implicated, they stay in office still. The DCI comes in with a case and, investigated well, and the Jubilee government will do nothing about it. And all the president can say, quoting him in 2016, what do you want me to do? I mean, we elected him to do something.
Well,
Brother Reuben, it's a rogue government.
Yeah, it's clear that...
we need to, they need to leave office.
You're pretty dissatisfied, clearly.
Absolutely.
Now, tell us, how will you, or how do you intend yourself to fix this?
Okay, so the first thing I must say, in all due respect, to clean up the mess that the Jubilee government has brought to Kenya is going to take time. Let's be realistic. You cannot fix that mess in one swoop of, okay, I ascend office and it's done. But we can reverse a lot of those. We can do what they have refused to do, because it takes will, for example, to fight graft. It takes will to stand against corruption. It takes will to act on justice. This particular government will not even respect court orders. This particular government will not listen to people in terms of priorities. And so they find, for example, BBI more important than vaccines. They find BBI more important than people losing jobs daily because of what has happened to us. So priorities, if you can't get a government to prioritize, the government, those people need to leave office. Absolutely. Yes.
And
so to answer your question, I would like to go a different direction. First of all, do the very simple things. 58 years later from independence, Kenyans are still hungry. I mean, 11 months ago, you had the Kisauni woman boiling stones as a placebo to deceive the children that the stones are food. 11 months ago, 2020, 58 years later, we are where we are. 58 years later, we have Mau Mau people that, those who fought for independence that are living in squalor. It is absolutely unacceptable. You have people in Pokot going to look for berries in the forest to survive. You have people in Ukambani dying of aflatoxin and without water 58 years later. And so I'm looking at that and saying, if I could do one thing to just concentrate on ensuring that no citizen whatsoever goes hungry. Basic food.
And somebody will ask, Reuben, we get the aspect of food. I know there will be other aspects that will come out of this, out of your ideology. So somebody will ask, how do you intend to do that?
Easy, very easy. You begin with, you go from the known to the unknown. First of all, agriculture. Why is it that we import maize, for example? And there is maize all over this country. And there is, land that you could use to grow maize. If you invested in agriculture, you not only feed your people, but you put money in the pockets of the farmers. You don't, you then eliminate the middlemen who bring in all these fake fertilizers and so on. You deal with that. You deal with the cartels in the tea and coffee sectors so that farmers have money. What does it take to undo a cartel? That's why you're in office. So if I can't undo a cartel, I should be voted out. And that's the same thing. The cartels are killing the incomes of Kenyans. So that, for example, let me just give you the example of the musicians. So for every 10 shillings that a musician makes, almost 8.5 will go away from the musician. So the musician ends up with 1.5 shillings out of 10. Why? Why? And so you look at food security and you say, why would we be importing maize from Tanzania, for example, when we can have the maize here? And we can certainly import what we don't have. Why is it we have killed our sugar factories? Why is it that the potatoes in Nyandarua are rotting? Why is it that cabbages are being fed to animals? And yet there are people starving without food. It's so simple. Block out the imports and import only what you need. Then empower the farmers so that they grow enough food, not just for Kenyans, but also for export. So that's just a food security. And it's about ensuring that nobody goes to bed hungry. You see, if someone is full, they can work. If somebody has food, they can go to school. If a child is hungry, even if you take the child to school, there is no way that child will concentrate. And so let's deal with food security. Secondly, let's deal with health. That the basic health services are available. That you don't have to go to a hospital, in Nanyuki or somewhere in Kisii, and you are told, go to the pharmacy and buy painkillers. 21st century. NHIF is not organized. Right now we are having to even budget, with this recent budget, we are having to budget for COVID funds because NHIF cannot even deal with COVID. Even isolation. I mean, people are paying for COVID tests. Something is completely wrong. And it's about equitable distribution of health services. There are parts of these countries where you have a dispensary every 5 or 10 kilometers. There are parts of this country, if a woman needed to, deliver a baby, quite likely she'll deliver in, when walking to the hospital. Why is that? When we have enough nurses to spread around and train and so on. So health services, if I'm full, I've eaten, and I'm healthy, basic health. It's God who gives us health, but there are things He's asked us to do. So if I'm healthy and I'm full, then I can work. I can be productive. So that would be my third thing, that I ensure there is a conducive environment for investment, for, that money is available for young people to invest in their projects, that we are making it easy to do business, make energy affordable, make it easy for investors to come here and give people jobs.
You know,
and so I can go on.
Okay,
But
it's clear, Brother Reuben. And it's,
Yeah.
I know that one of the lines that is accompanying your, your ideology is Reset Kenya.
Yes.
And what you've
the
talked
way you
about,
take a phone to factory settings.
yes, and what you've talked about is food. You've talked about health. You've talked about work. And
Yes.
that sounds very much an inspiration coming from the immediate independent Kenya, where there were the three things that
Yes, yes.
the leadership at that time was focusing on.
Yes.
But let's just
Ignorance,
move on.
poverty, and disease.
Exactly.
Now, the embarrassing thing, Reverend, is that we're still talking about those things 58 years later.
Okay, let's.
I can't take it.
All right. I mean, many of us can't take it. Many Kenyans can't take it.
So let's do it.
All right. All right. All right.
Let's do it.
Now let's hear now. Let's hear now, Brother Reuben, how you're building values, initiative, is able to feed into this
Oh,
ideology.
wow.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Now, the reason why we are where we are is not because we lack resources. Kenya is blessed. People would kill to have Kenya as a country. Talk about rainfall. Talk about, tourism. Talk about agriculture. Talk about, we don't have extreme seasons. We are always in the sunlight. And so if you're talking energy, you could tap into solar power. If you're talking about land production from land, agri-based production, we have it all. I mean, when you think about the Galana project failing, you want to ask what's wrong with us. You think about Nairobians not having water, and yet God brings his rain faithfully every year to Nairobi, and we can't tap that water. You talk about, even look at like River Nairobi, the Nairobi River. In Michuki's day, the cleanup was done. We could have clean rivers. So the point is, it's not lack of resources. It's not, in fact, Kenya has some of the best human resource. We export human resource to other countries. Now, what has gone wrong is that the software that drives who we are as a people has gone wrong. And that's why we need to reset. What happens when your phone or your computer malfunctions? You return to factory settings. You ask, where did we go wrong? And where we've gone wrong is that we have lost our God-given values. Jesus put it so simply. You can summarize the law in two statements. One, love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. And two, love your neighbor as yourself. If you have those two, you actually don't need the Constitution, because that becomes your constitution. Jeremiah would say, God has written it on the tablets of your heart. Before you do anything, you think, is this honoring God? Or is it honoring my neighbor? So that is what we've lost. Let me show you how we've lost it. We have so lost our values that today children are asking for bribes to show you direction. I mean, I was going to preach at a high school called Kamagut in the Uasin Gishu area. And I lose direction. I don't know where the school is. And I stopped by these 8 or 9-year-olds coming from school. It was about 4 p.m. And I ask, hey, where is Kamagut Secondary? And they say, Mzee, iko tu hapa mbele. It's just drive on. So I say, thank you very much. And you know what the kid says? He says, Mzee, unaniacha tu hivyo. Unatuacha tu hivyo. That is how badly, that's how far we've sunk. Because the policeman expects that if they inspect your car along the highway, you need to give them something. And I mean, talk about inspect. Why should they be inspecting? If you know that your vehicle is faulty, why are you putting it on the road in the first place? But let's assume that you actually manage to go on the road. Maybe you have something wrong with the car. Why do we overlap as a people, for example? Why is it that we always think I must be first. It's a value-based thing. And it eats right into government, where it feels, you feel, okay, this money is allocated for education of our children, but I can have half of it. And by the way, it is so happening even in the church. I mean, we say we are 83% Christians, but if you see the things that are happening in the church, tribalism and so on, even swinging of hands in contracts, you have the putting up of sanctuaries with people inflating the cost of constructing churches.
Yeah, Brother Reuben.
So the fabric of our value system is torn, and we need to reset. And only the church has the software to be able to rebuild that value-based system. The Constitution comes with Chapter 6 and Article 10 and so on. But you know, you can take somebody to prison and they'll become worse until the heart changes.
All right. Brother Reuben,
Yes.
very well. Very passionate about values. And many people would agree with you that we need a reset of values.
Do they really?
We need a values revolution, right?
Yes, we do.
Now, the question to you is, how do you do that? Because there's always the narrative that values are a very private place, right? And
I think that's wrong.
And here you are, and you have values as your a values revolution as the center of your ideology, right?
Yeah.
So how do you make sure that this values terrain changes in the favor of the people?
So Reverend, let me tell you on camera, if we don't go that direction, give us 5 years, we'll not have a society. We are going down the cliff pretty fast, and we just have to stop. You know, I gave the example of a bus that has taken off with a faulty tire, you know, and the driver has taken off at high speed, and the passengers are calling out, stop, 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 and he says, siezi bwana, tumechelewa, you know. That is where Kenya is going. And I gave the example of going down to the Indian Ocean, for example. And you can see the water body ahead of us. So unless we stop, you see, you can't insist on going on when you have a flat tire, because you'll crash. So what has happened is we have gone so far. If we don't do something about values, we'll crash. Now, the how.
The how is
the how is so critical. So let's speak. You know, it begins with me, okay? And that's why I want to run. Because we can complain all we want. And, you know, even my friends in the church are telling me that's not your space. It's too dirty. You know what? That's what Jesus did. He came to a dirty world. He was willing to eat our filth so that we can be, he became like one of us. So I'm going in, inspired by Christ, to say, yes, it's dirty. I mean, who's going to be dirtied? They say, you are going to be so dirty, but I'm the one going in, not them. And I'm saying, I'm willing to eat the filth. I'm willing to be maligned. I'm willing to be called names. If for no other reason than that we cannot go on like this, at least one person must protest what is going on. So it begins with me. And I'm stepping out. Whether people vote for me or not, that is neither here nor there. I wish they could. But until somebody offers themselves, there is no alternatives. A lot of people saying, I'm never going to vote again. I want to give people a reason to vote again. So it begins with me. Secondly, it begins by focusing on family. We really must defend the family, because if the family collapses, society collapses. And so my value campaign is going to have to defend, you know, men who are working so that they can earn decent jobs and go home decent. Single mothers, single fathers, single parents, you know, orphaned children. We must protect the family. We can't leave our children on the streets. We can't give them and baptize them street children. They don't belong to the streets. So we must enter the family space and defend family values, and, you know, work with the courts to give justice to families. Then we must go to the schools, because the schools have been taken up by secular values. We must regain those values and ask, the church, ask the mosques to take back the schools and send chaplains into these schools so that our children begin to be impacted by value-based teachers. Work with the Teacher Service Commission so that we reinstitute some of the lost subjects that gave us values, that we have counselors, that we have ministers going into the schools to talk about values. Then now you can take it to the public spaces. We need to engage media. We need to engage parliament. We need to engage the courts. It is, if you can think about a puzzle, it is a puzzle that you attack from every side. And so it's not one thing you go in with negotiation. You have to go in totally sold out to the fact that in these 5 years, God willing, and the people supporting, we will turn this country around.
All right, Brother Reuben, very passionate there, clearly, about the specific values or zones that you are going to address from a values angle, so that we can bring change in this country.
Yeah, now, and don't forget clean business.
All right.
Yeah.
Now that's interesting, because when we talk about values, and we talk about the church being a big engine, you know, in terms of bringing these values to be. But some people in the church are telling you that that's not your space.
Exactly.
But at the same time, we want to hear you in terms of the support you'd expect from the church, being a pastor, being a gospel musician, being one who's taking a values path in terms of your campaign. What are your expectations as far as the church is concerned?
So I'll go I'll go to it through the back door and ask you, who, in your opinion, was the best king of Israel? It's David, isn't it? Who was the best musician in Israel? It's David. We still sing his songs, the Psalms. So if you can picture this, someone whose heart is so devotional that, he will sing to God, he will talk to God about the people, he will worship God and seek God and get the mandate to lead people from God. That's the combination I'm looking for as I step forward in faith, following after Jesus, my Lord, and the example of someone like David, the servant king. Because if you don't have servant leadership, where you lead, but you also have a Nathan on your side who tells you you can't do this, so that you have a John the Baptist who tells you you cannot have Herodias. That combination is critical. And that's why the church becomes important in this discourse, because the church becomes the conscience of the society. And so we go at it saying we must work together. If I got the support that I am desiring from the church, we can have this election decided in 2 hours. This next election. If just half the Christians turned out and said, Reuben, we hear you, let's do it, by 9 a.m. we would be talking victory.
All right. Definitely the church is a big constituency, not just in terms of population, but in terms of ideals.
Yes.
And hopefully that those who are listening can resonate with what your values approach is like, and consider a lot of things, right? And it's interesting that you also say that the church has, almost abandoned its own before. And let's see also how, the church
Let me tell you, Reverend, what happens every time I write on Facebook or Twitter that I'm going to run for president. The first group to discredit me are usually mostly Christians. They will come to it and say, let me paraphrase and say, we like you as a musician, but we don't like you as an activist. Or some will say, you've lost your calling. Some will say, ask Reverend Pius Muiru. he flopped, you will flop, in other words. And ask, Dr. Margaret Wanjiru, ask Professor James Ole Kiapi, who came in on a Christian candidate. So, first of all, to be read like that, by Christians is embarrassing to me, because we are all very different. If you were to compare me, for example, with Reverend Muiru, who has not been in the activism spaces for all this time and so on, and that notwithstanding, we are coming from two different directions of activism. And then let me put it in a kind way and say, do you know why Reverend Muiru or any of the other Christians like Professor James Ole Kiapi did not make it to office? Whose mistake was it? They offered themselves. It is because the Christians abandoned. So you don't abandon your candidates and then begin to say, ask them, you see, they failed. I tell my people in Vihiga, when I ran, and like 1 year later, I see a delegation coming to me and saying, we are very sorry, we should have voted you in. I said, but that was not my mistake. I offered myself. A lot of people don't know what it takes for somebody to run for office. There are sacrifices, there are insecurities on the part of your family, on the part of your life. And for me, for me, as someone living with visual disability, I'm a very easy target. So when these people come to me after all these considerations, and they, it's just one thing after another, you're tearing into what you can't make it, then I say, why don't you step out? And we'll support you.
All right.
So you see, the hypocritical nature of the church is such that it shoots its wounded. It neglects and despises those who come to fit in these spaces. And I'm hoping that we don't do that this time.
All right.
I think that we turn out and vote. And so let's get it done this time around. We can't keep hoping that good people will get into office. And I'm not saying I'm that good. I'm saying if we want people who stand for certain values in leadership, then they step out. You are a hypocrite if you then become the cold water on you pour cold water on them.
Brother Reuben,
Yes.
The church is listening to you, pastors are listening to you, and so they're hearing, and have no doubt they are. Let's see what kind of decisions they make.
Yeah.
This is a very vibrant conversation, Brother Reuben.
And look at the alternative.
Yeah.
The alternative is live with the filth. Let's not complain in 2023 that we want different.
Okay, the church is listening.
Okay.
Pastors are listening, and definitely you've made yourself very clear. Now, finally, when we think about you running for president,
Yes.
one of the things that comes to the mind of everyone is your coalition.
Okay.
What formation are you going to join?
Okay.
Maybe you can tell the same people you're appealing to to vote different, what formation to expect as far as your candidacy is concerned.
Okay, so I'll paint the picture because I would be preempting what I'm going to be doing next month because I'll be making my public declaration early next month. But picture it this way. You have three positions. You have the government side, what you would call the right. And there you have the president and his elder brother, Honorable Raila Odinga. Then you have the One Kenya Alliance that is, is saying BBI is so good, let's effect all these changes. Then you have Deputy President who is half foot in government, 1 foot in government and another outside, saying, hey, Kalonzo, hey, Musalia, please come, let's form an alternative voice. But he's still in government. And that's one major positive challenge I have to the Deputy President. He should have stood up by now and taken a stand against all that we want changed. Because he's in government, he's number 2. So, and then you have the left, the people that all these people are claiming to represent. And, you know, people are saying, do something, and the right says no. The people saying, do something, and the middle, represented by the Deputy President, is saying, when I get into office, he's in office, by the way, and then, you know, we are going to make a hustler-based nation. And I'm saying, okay, on this left side, there are many, many disenfranchised people, but there are also many who are not necessarily in the hustler dynamic. Because when you become president for all, not just for hustlers. There are people who've made, you know, good wealth, or rather clean wealth, that are going to be called dynasties by the so-called hustler. So I'm saying, let's forget about all these right-wing and middle-wing politics. Let's pull together all of us and hopefully talk to the right. Let's make one nation. So the one thing that I'm bringing to the table that they cannot, one is that I'm not going on a tribal card. Because Kenya is one nation. By the way, I should be open to you and say, I was born in Vihiga. My mother is Maragoli, my father is a Munyore. I went to school in Kisumu and Thika. I married a Kikuyu wife, and I live in Wasingishu. So what kind of Kenyan am I? So I'm saying this is the narrative we need to have. Regardless of your community, you're my friend. We are Kenya, you know, one Kenya. And it's not the one Kenya of the One Kenya Alliance, because they come with what Mutahi Ngunyi was calling the tyranny of numbers. The tyranny of numbers is really about polarization on tribe. That is a wicked thing. We are all Kenyan, regardless of whether you're Somali, Turkana, you know, Indian, Kikuyu, Kisi. Let's all come together and have a different narrative. We must not punish people from central Kenya, for example, just because Uhuru has been president. I mean, we can't think that way anymore. We can do better than that.
All right, Brother Reuben. Yes.
So
Yes.
I can bring to the table unity, a unity agenda that the others will not. In fact, if you remember, okay, I'll not go personal, but there are people who will ask you, they will judge you by your second name. That must be undone. We have to reset that.
All right.
And so when I'm coming to the table, I'm saying my coalition, to answer your question, my coalition is really the coalition of people who believe in values, who believe in justice, who believe in the rule of law, who believe in a better Kenya that is there for all, regardless of who you are.
All right.
Yes.
Brother Reuben,
Yes.
seems this is a conversation to be continued. And as you continue with this goal, as you discern the formations, and as you rally, you know, people with your ideals, we pray you all the best.
Thank you, sir.
And
Thank
we
you.
look forward to having more conversations with you as you go on with this journey.
I really appreciate that. And you know, elections are a matter of choice. It's a will thing. And so we will sell our agenda, and we'll do what we can to show you which way we can take this country. It's up to you to vote.
All right. Thank you very much, Reuben Kigame. And it's very clear your passion as you go into this, presidency run. I mean, it's your passion.
I have a joke that I'll leave with you.
Your passion is very clear.
Yes, I'll leave you a joke. I'm going to run, even if mine is the only vote.
All right. Viewer, we've been talking to Reuben Kigame, and he is really pushing that front of the values. And as we continue with these discussions around leadership and 2022, we definitely will hear more from him as time unfolds and as events unfold. Thank you very much for being part of Spotlight. We are always here to bring you persons who are passionate about changing this country and driving it in the direction of light. Thank you for watching again. This has been Spotlight.